Star Wars Resistance. I don't really have too much to say about this show. To be honest, I haven't watched the entire series. I've just kind of watched a couple episodes here and there. So I guess my opinion isn't super valid. So I guess I would just kind of base it on, the episodes I have seen. But yeah, I think what I like about the show the most is kind of like the different animation style that it has. It feels kind of more like a 2D, 3D kind of hybrid show, which I think is like really cool. Kind of distinguishes itself from Rebels and from Clone Wars. I think what it really does well, just from the episodes I've seen, it kind of gives more background to like what was going on in the Resistance during the sequel trilogy, just because, episode 7 and 8 kind of take place like a day or two away from each other. You don't really get to see what happens then, and then, there's a time jump in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, so it's kind of cool to see, what was going on in the background during those events. But I think like my only downside is that like this one, kind of like with Rebels Season 1, where this is kind of like a little bit more kid-friendly, a little bit more goofy, kind of more focused on like gags and stuff like that, which is fine just because, I know that this is like geared towards like a younger audience where, Rebels is more towards like a middle grade audience. This is definitely more for like, maybe like elementary audience. I mean, obviously all of Star Wars shows are meant for everyone, but this is kind of geared towards, the younger viewers. I guess that was like kind of the reason why, I didn't get into the show as much, and I didn't really, follow it along as much, just because it wasn't really, towards my demographic. I mean, it's no fault of the show, that's just, who the audience is. So yeah, as long as it's good for them, then, that's all that really matters. So yeah, I guess that kind of be my only like negative about it, but not really a negative. Kind of like I said before, like I don't have too many opinions about Resistance just because I haven't seen all of it. I think if there's like one thing that they could change is that if they could have kind of adopted more of the style from Rebels and kind of had a slightly more mature tone, just because, it takes place with like the Resistance, just so much like untold story that we didn't really get from the sequel trilogy. I know there's like books and comics and video games that kind of center around the Resistance. This could have been a really good way to kind of show like, hey, how did the Resistance get formed? How is it different from the New Republic? Maybe give more background to like how the First Order rose. My problem with Force Awakens is that there's like a 30-year gap. It's like what happened after the rebellion took down the Empire, and now suddenly the First Order is in power. The New Republic, I guess, is still in power, but they're kind of like at a stalemate, I guess, and then the Resistance is like a completely different faction from the New Republic. It would have been interesting if Resistance kind of just delved more deeply into that background, and because not everybody reads the books or the comic books or plays all the video games, so having like a TV show that kind of explains all that backstory of like what happened during that 30 years instead of kind of having a family-friendly show. Anyway, maybe if I like watch a show, there could be more like Easter eggs, more explanation and stuff like that. Again, I haven't watched the entire show, so I can't really have like a valid opinion on this one. Just from like my perspective of being like a Star Wars fan and wanting to know more about the Resistance, it would have been cool if that was the tone of the show, that was the setting of the show, that was the premise of it, is that kind of gives more explanation of kind of like that gap that I was talking about before, like what happened in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, just as far as politics and the government. But yeah, I know that would be like super hard to do, have a show be all about politics and everything. So yeah, those are kind of like overall my thoughts of Resistance. Like it's a fun show for its audience, I'm sure, and I just kind of wish that they kind of gave more background to kind of like that 30-year gap in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. All right, and then we'll just wrap up this video with Tales of the Jedi. This is like another great show that I really liked. Obviously, the fact that Dave Filoni is all over it, anything he really touches is gold, so I knew that this was going to be good. Just based on the trailers, just seeing the young Dooku and then, more backstory for Ahsoka, I thought was really cool. Honestly, the only downside is that I wish there was more. Not only do I wish there was more, but I wish there were like longer episodes. That would have been really cool if like these were actually like, 22-minute episodes. But I know these were like, short films and everything, or like short series, short stories. For what we got some really, really cool, compelling stories. And I was particularly interested in like the Dooku episodes, just seeing him get more backstory, just seeing why he turned away from the Jedi Council, and seeing, kind of like the flaws within the Jedi. Obviously we kind of see that in the prequels, but we kind of see like, they're kind of blind to a lot of this other stuff that's kind of going on in the galaxy. And, maybe there are alternatives to bring down the dark side and everything, or like end the war and like the Separatists versus like the New Republic. Maybe they don't have it all figured out and everything. So even though, you might not agree with everything Dooku was standing for, you can kind of understand it a little bit more. I'm glad they had like characters like Qui-gon in there, because he was kind of like in the gray area, as far as like the Jedi Council. They had Yaddle in there, and again, spoiler alert, that whole duel that Yaddle and Dooku had, and then eventually, he slayed Yaddle down. Like that was very like dark and very dramatic. I'm like, yeah, see, you can do kind of dark dramatic stuff in animation and everything. It doesn't have to be like super kid friendly and all that, and you can tell a compelling story, not have too much violence and too much darkness and stuff like that. And then seeing more of like Ahsoka, her storyline, just seeing her whole origin story about how, as soon as she was born, she was already force sensitive and she can already have communication with like animals and, kind of like manipulate their minds and everything. Thought that was really cool. I think the only like downside for that is like, I thought we would actually see the Jedi Council visiting her planet and then her family having to actually give her up, because we haven't really seen that in any, Star Wars shows or movies or anything. I guess the only thing we've seen was, when Anakin gets taken away by qui-gon in episode 1. But obviously, he's like a 9-year-old kid. It wasn't like him as a baby being taken away. So it would have been kind of cool if we saw that. But yeah, totally understandable with that one. But yeah, I love the episode where, she's training with the clones, and then we kind of see, like, I was like, okay, why is she doing all this training stuff? And then we see kind of flash forward to the Clone Wars episode, the season 7 episode, where we see like how she puts that all in use, like, oh shoot. So I thought that was like really, really cool, really emotional scene. And then seeing like the funeral for Padme, I'm seeing it from a different perspective, and the fact that Ahsoka was there that whole time, and the conversation she has with Bail Organa, the fact that, okay, we may have lost this battle, but we're not gonna lose the war, and then the origins of her becoming Fulcrum, and then how she continues on like Rebels, and then Ahsoka, and then all that. So yeah, it just kind of got me more excited for the Ahsoka show, see more of Ahsoka's backstory and her history, how she's like, compelled to do the things she does in the rest of the Star Wars series and films and everything. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for that. And then yeah, with Dooku, just seeing more like backstory with him, because like we didn't really get too much of him in Attack the Clones. Like he showed up like halfway, and then obviously we got some stuff in Clone Wars, but we didn't really get too much like backstory stuff. We kind of just got stuff of him scheming throughout the Clone Wars and everything, and then obviously he Revenge of the Sith, he gets killed off, and you don't really get too much with him. So it was cool to kind of like watch the series, and then maybe like later on rewatch episode 2 and Clone Wars and episode 3, and kind of see like why he did the things he did, why he turned to the dark side, how he kind of sees the cracks in the Republic and in the Jedi Order. Yeah, so I'm really hoping that they do either like a season 2 of this, like more Jedi. Maybe they'll do like Plo Koon, because I know that's Dave Filoni's like favorite Jedi. Maybe Ki-Mundi, Kit Fisto, like Mace Windu, who knows, Anakin, Obi-Wan, any Jedi really, Yoda would be kind of cool. Or like a Tales of the Sith, get more of like, Darth Maul, get more of General Grievous, go back into, like the Knights of the Old Republic or something, like Darth Bane or, whoever it might be, kind of get these different Sith tales and everything like that. Oh yeah, and another thing, the episode where Ahsoka is kind of like in that farm planet, she has to hide her powers, and then obviously this traitor teenager guy tells this Inquisitor about her, and they have their little duel. Kind of remind me of the duel in Rebels between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, where it was kind of very short and everything. It would have been kind of cool if it was like, a big full-on battle, but I know this is kind of more of like an emotional battle, kind of like they established in Rebels. So yeah, that's totally understandable, but it would have been cool if we kind of saw more, because he was a very like interesting design to him. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like, the Sith character in Knights of the Old Republic, or like the early concepts of like Kylo Ren with his mask and everything. So it would have been kind of nice if like we at least got to see his identity after, his head got chopped off and everything. But I know this is more like Ahsoka's journey, and not necessarily about, the whole kind of Sith influence, but really just her journey into becoming this kind of new hope in a way for the galaxy, and like helping out the new rebellion characters. But yeah, overall, those were my thoughts on Tales of Jedi. Thought it was a really great show. I really hope either do a season 2 or do like a spin-off series with like Tales of the Sith, or like other short series that they have. But yeah, I thought overall it was really, really good, and I wish there was more.